News of an Israeli attack on Iran has caused a notable surge in oil prices. The strike was carried out in retaliation to what was described as an unprecedented bombardment by Iran over the past weekend. Now, according to analysts from the Bureau for Economic Research, these geopolitical uncertainties are expected to have an impact on domestic markets as well. To help us unpack the latest developments on this conflict, I'm joined by Thembisa Fakude, Senior Research Fellow at the Africa-Asia Dialogues. Thank you so much, Thembisa, for joining us once again. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Now, the recent tensions between Israel and Iran, should these escalate, are we to ready ourselves for a scenario where supply risks of commodities such as oil would be a global concern?
Yes, I think so. I think if this does escalate, you can expect that there's going to be disturbance, not only in terms of energy supply, but flights are also going to be disturbed. Because if you saw what happened on Saturday last week, when Iran sent those drones and missiles to Israel, the interruption was quite big because the airlines were trying to avoid the dangerous airspaces and trying to get away from harm's way. So if this does escalate, we are likely to have a serious problem. But of course, you know, the world must blame one country in particular that continues to violate other people's basic rights and human rights, and continuing with this genocide that we see at the moment in Palestine. And being an aggressor, we have to remember that it was Israel that attacked Iran first before Iran retaliated.
So how do you see this conflict then potentially impacting the geopolitical dynamics of the Middle East region?
Well, it's going to impact the geopolitical dynamics, not only in the Middle East, but other parts of the world, because it has set a precedence. It's no longer going to be business as usual in terms of political practice and behavior. We are basically, if this is allowed to go ahead, countries can do as they please. You can go and bomb anyone's embassy and get away with it. The United Nations is not going to call you to order, nor are you going to face the repercussions. So that's what has happened in this case. So geopolitically, of course, it's bad news, but the saddest part is that you have countries in the region who are planning to normalize relations with Israel. So it might just be even more difficult for Iran and the Palestinians if these countries such as United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain continue with their rapprochement with Israel, which means, therefore, that this new normal is likely to impact and change the political behavior in the region, making it even much more dangerous than it is at the moment.
I mean, you started off that answer by saying that, of course, it's going to affect us globally. How do you see these tensions between these countries now spilling over and affecting countries like South Africa?
Well, alliances are now drawn. Friendships have been created, particularly after this war. South Africa is sitting in a certain different corner to, for example, the United States in this conflict. South Africa has called Israel what it is, and have taken Israel to ICJ and accused Israel of genocide. So you have this cleavage expanding every day. So what will start happening, what you start seeing, should this escalate, you're going to start seeing alliances being formed, and neighbors are going to start redefining the relationships. In Southern Africa, for example, depending which side other countries decide to take in this conflict or global disagreement, you might just see a new way of how countries are going to deal with each other, both economically and politically. So this has got a very, very serious possible implications should it escalate. And I think in South Africa, we know exactly where we're going to be located in terms of our political alliances. And should that happen, then it's going to be a chaos and havoc for global world politics.
And I think we'll touch a little later on that in terms of that possible global havoc and if South Africa is ready for such. But just honing it back into South Africa and its economy, I mean, the knock-on effect of these tensions often result in interest rate hikes. And the prospects of rate cuts in South Africa in 2024 are likely to be 0 to none in the next coming months. How do you think this influences the South African voter, and what impact will this have on political parties promising a better economic life for South Africans?
Well, I don't think the South African voters are really concentrating on this or trying to closely analyze what's going on at the moment in the Middle East. It is likely to impact on South Africans post the elections in May. But at the moment, what's going on, I don't think it has got any impact on the South African voting pattern or behavior, except for certain sections of the community, particularly the communities that have been very pro-Palestinian. You are likely to see them supporting the government of South Africa because of its position that is taken. But the general South African populace, I doubt if this conflict, nor the current tensions in the Middle East are going to impact in any way or form in their voting pattern or behavior in May 29th.
And any trade-related implications between South Africa and other countries due to this conflict between Israel and Iran?
Yes, indeed. I mean, South Africa is one of the biggest investors in Iran. You know, we have MTN there and other interest in Iran. And the relationship between South Africa and Iran is quite healthy, not because they support same political foes or positioning, but we've had a traditional economic relationship with Iran. South Africa is, notwithstanding its geography and location, we are biting much more, above our weight in terms of global investments. Very few African countries can actually claim to have had an investment of the size of investment that South Africa has, particularly in countries such as Iran, Nigeria, and others. So that is very important. And I think South Africa will be very concerned should the conflict escalate in the Middle East, because South Africa does stand to lose. As I've said, we are one of the very few substantial African investors in Iran.
And of course, those diplomatic relations and some of our foreign policies with other countries would be impacted because of this.
Certainly. We've made it very clear. South Africa was the very first country that has made it clear where it stood in this war. It supported the Palestinian people, and I don't think the politicians, particularly from the government of this country, have minced their words in terms of where they stand in this war. But at the same time, we've seen other countries such as Britain, France, Germany, in particular, United States, standing very firm with Israel. So this is likely to polarize the global political positioning, particularly the United Nations, henceforth, because South Africa now is going to be sitting quite comfortably with other nations that oppose this kind of genocide that we're seeing at the moment unfolding in Gaza. And I think this is going to dictate henceforth politics, because the politicians, I mean, this is a big year for Europe in terms of elections. And I don't think that the Palestinian or the war on Gaza is going to be excluded from the discussions leading to votes in Europe. So South Africa is sitting quite, has taken a very much more stronger stance, and this is likely, therefore, to oppose the incoming foreign positions in Europe, particularly when it comes to Palestine, because we've seen what Europeans, both on the left and on the right-hand side of the political aisle, which positions that they've taken regarding Israel.
Certainly. I mean, you made mention of the stance that South Africa has taken, and in us taking Israel to the ICJ, and of course the world not doing much and standing by with regards to Israel being that aggressor. Are there then any security or counterterrorism concerns that South Africa might need to consider given these tensions?
Oh, certainly. I don't think that we should be oblivious or ignorant of the fact that, those that we have offended during this time of atrocities that are taking place in Gaza might just want to do something to us. And we need to be very, very aware and careful of that. But importantly for me is we have to act should that happen, because you have other people who are actually organizing within South Africa and who have shown their positions in terms of where they stand in this conflict. Most of them, particularly those that have relations or stronger relations with countries that are supporting this genocide. I'm of the view that we might just see something happening in this country because of that. Some of them are aggrieved that have taken this position. So I don't think they'll just take this lying down, having seen their type of behavior in terms of what do they do to those who disagree with them. So we have to be ready for anything. But as I've said, and importantly, we have to be ready to take actions against those that want to harm this country. We know at the moment, for example, that some South Africans are fighting along the Israeli forces in Gaza, and Minister Naledi Pandor has made it very clear that those who are currently engaged in this very brutal war against the Palestinians, when they come back, they'll be arrested.
All right. And just lastly, if someone is watching this, Mr. Fakude, and these are South Africans at grassroots level, how much of an impact does this conflict between Israel and Iran have on that ordinary South African?
Price of goods and services are going to escalate should this war between Israel and Iran escalate, because the energy sources come from that part of the world, that region. We might not necessarily be importing as much as we'd like to be importing from Iran, but everything else that will be coming from there will be disturbed in terms of whether it's transportation, whether it's the actual extraction of resources that we need for energy. So this is very, very important. It's going to trickle down to the prices of bread and butter. And this is why, therefore, that it's important for us to push for de-escalation. It's important for us to ensure that we push and stop the current war on Gaza, which is going on, because that is actually what has created this particular challenge. But important in terms of global politics, you can't have a situation where countries begin to violate airspaces of other countries and bomb and destroy embassies and consulates of other countries, and it should just be business as usual. It is a bad precedent, and South Africans must know about it, that should it be allowed to continue, it's likely to impact our politics and economics.
Thembisa, always a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. That was Thembisa Fakude, Senior Research Fellow at Africa-Asia Dialogues.